The Nebula Reacher floated, a steel shadow swallowed by the infinite cold of deep space. Stars blinked like indifferent eyes, distant and unmoved, as the ship lay trapped in the silence of the void. The mission was routine, or so they believed, a simple exploration to map and extract resources from asteroids. They were a crew of 5, seasoned but human, each harboring small whispers of hope and fatigue that space travel etched into every soul. A month in, a signal found them. It was faint, almost hidden in static, but unmistakable. A distress call. No beacon had been recorded from this region, a place that even charts left blank. The sound, a low drone that pulsed irregularly, seemed to reach into their minds, urging attention. Captain Lynn Arante's eyes narrowed as she listened, fingers drumming against the cold steel of the console. Protocol whispered caution. Instinct dared curiosity. "It's likely just an echo, some rogue transmission caught in the silence," she said, her voice steady but layered with doubt. Yet the hum gnawed at her resolve. She took a breath. "We'll take a look." Jonah, the youngest of them, shifted in his seat, his expression uncertain. He didn't argue, but the worry was there, a thin sheen of sweat above his brow. They approached the vessel that shouldn't have been there. It loomed like a dead god, colossal and scarred by eons of forgotten journeys. The hull was dark, marked by gashes that bled an unnatural greenish light. No name adorned its sides, no history accompanied its presence. The onboard scanners agreed. It was lifeless. "Captain, this is wrong," Jonah whispered, his voice small in the heavy silence. Lynn glanced at him, a flicker of doubt flashing in her eyes, but hesitation had no place here. She tightened her jaw. "We're going in." The docking maneuver was precise, practiced, but as the airlock sealed and the crew stepped into the ship's hollowed corridors, a chill settled deeper than space ever could. The walls were slick, coated with a black, viscous substance that seemed to shift when looked at from the corner of the eye. Strange carvings stretched across the surfaces, symbols that felt violent, as if carved in a frenzy or ritual. Alice, the engineer, reached out, her gloved hand brushing the wall. "It feels warm," she murmured, eyes wide. The faint green glow caught the light, and for a moment it looked like the walls breathed. "Stay alert," Lynn said, trying to steady the tremor in her voice, but the words bounced back hollow, swallowed by a silence that felt sentient. Deeper into the ship, they found it. The room was vast, lined with veins of the black substance that coalesced at its heart, a monolith of darkness. It stood twice as tall as any of them, its surface glistening, pulsing with the green light that seemed to thrum in time with their own racing hearts. Alice's hand dropped to her side. "What is this?" she whispered, her words trembling on a razor's edge. "Don't touch it," Lynn ordered, eyes never leaving the obelisk. But her voice felt distant, as if someone else spoke for her. A scream cut through the silence, a sound of pure, raw terror. The crew spun around to find Malik, the medic, on the floor, gasping, eyes wide and unfocused. His helmet was cracked, a thin trail of blood seeping from his nose. "Malik!" Lynn dropped to his side, hands shaking as she tried to hold him still. His eyes darted wildly, as if seeing 1,000 horrors at once. Then his body went limp, breath shallow and fading. Jonah backed up against the wall, eyes wide, breath coming in sharp gasps. "We need to leave, now." The hum intensified, reverberating through their bones. The corridor outside the chamber twisted, bending like a serpent, and the walls seemed to lean in. Panic set in, every instinct screaming for escape. The way back was a maze, a trap that twisted upon itself. They ran, their boots pounding against metal that felt less solid with every step. Lynn's heart hammered as she spun around another corner, only to find herself in a hallway she didn't recognize. The green glow followed them, shadows dancing and stretching into forms that whispered and writhed. Alice stumbled, crying out as a tendril of the black substance slithered over her ankle, curling tight with impossible strength. Lynn lunged, reaching for her, but the wall itself seemed to shift, separating them. "Lynn! Help me!" Alice's voice fractured as she was pulled into the dark, the sound of her screams cut off like a switch. The silence that followed was worse. They were down to 2. Lynn and Jonah pressed against a bulkhead, breathing ragged. The hum was louder now, deaf, a pulse that twisted thoughts into chaos. Lynn met Jonah's eyes, the terror reflected in them a mirror of her own. "Stay with me, Jonah. We have to." Her voice broke as Jonah was yanked into the dark, a blur of movement and screams that ended too suddenly. His helmet clattered to the floor, a hollow, blood-smeared echo of him. Lynn was alone. She staggered through the corridor, every step an eternity. The ship was no longer just metal and space. It was alive, breathing, waiting. The obelisk's hum resonated within her. A voice, a command. The walls pulsed with its life, the substance encroaching, testing, taunting. A door loomed ahead, a small circular room with Malak's broken helmet lying in the center, as if waiting for her. The hair on the back of her neck prickled as a figure stirred in the corner. Malak stood there, his body rigid, eyes locked on nothing. She took a step closer, the green glow casting his face in shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. "Malik?" Her voice cracked. He turned, eyes lifeless, skin glistening with the black substance. When he spoke, his voice was not his own. It was many. Layered and hollow, a chorus that carried the weight of centuries. "Join us." The walls closed in, and Lynn's breath caught as the obelisk's hum filled her mind, louder and louder, until there was nothing else but the dark, the green light, and the silence that followed. Days later, the Nebula Reacher reappeared, drifting aimlessly on the border of known space. The distress signal pulsed on, a low hum that called to the stars like a heartbeat. The rescue team found nothing, no crew, no bodies, only corridors that seemed too dark, too wet, and a final log corrupted by static. Captain Lynn's last transmission played in fractured syllables, a voice lost to despair. "It's not a ship," she said, breathless, as if the words could fight off the dark. "It's a door," and we opened it. The recording ended in the hum, deep and endless, a sound that never truly stopped.